We still have Vishwavir Ahuja with us from RBL. So Vishwavir, let me ask you the question that I was asking all the other experts. The fact that the repo rate and the reverse repo rate, more equally importantly, have been cut in a situation where the governor said this liquidity was abundant, was surplus, the system is flush with liquidity. He just kept getting, more and more, extravagant words to describe the situation of liquidity. Will the cut in the reverse repo rate really make a difference as far as bank lending is concerned? How will RBI look at this? Will they look at RBL? Will it be willing to lend more? How much would you cut your lending rate, Vishwavir?
Yeah. No, thank you for that question. First of all, I would say that the policy announcements are very favorable, and actually speaking, something that was necessary. It is not just sufficient to maintain an accommodative stance. It is also to give this sustained and deliberate message to the markets that liquidity will be maintained, at a very high level. And only then, when that sort of sinks in properly, because, I think we've seen a policy shift only in the last 3 odd months. Until 3 months ago, the stance was not only not accommodative, but also that uncertainty factor was always there. And I think, therefore, this sustained impetus is important to build that level of confidence, to be able for banks to be able to, therefore, bring down both their cost of funds through their deposit rates and also then do the transmission in terms of lending rates. So that is as far as the rate situation is concerned. I do believe also that this should help, in terms of the corporate bond market also. I think right now the spreads out there are very asymmetric and too high. And if there is, enough liquidity and confidence of liquidity being there for extended period of time, that should also be another important factor which we need to take into consideration. So from that point of view, that and a couple of the other steps that have been announced to increase credit flow to NBFCs and also to reduce the risk weight on the consumer credit, I think they are all very good steps.
Vishwavir, the governor has, the RBI rather, has raised the limit for which banks can lend to NBFCs as against 15% of Tier 1 to 20% of Tier 1. This, of course, is an enabler. Would a bank like yours be willing to raise the exposure to NBFCs to that 20% now that you have the leeway? Or would you still like to kind of play it by the ear, move a little bit more cautiously?
Well, the answer to that question from our bank's point of view is that we don't play in that space. We are not one of the large lenders, which make a difference either way. And for us, we have to be very conscious of the risk profile of whom we are lending to. I think the speaker just earlier was talking about the fact that lenders have to, the most important thing is to focus on asset quality. And for a relatively small bank like us, that is even more important. So from that point of view, I don't think this dispensation is particularly, done for banks like us. It is essentially for the very large lenders in the country. And I think certainly it should make a difference to them.
I've lost connectivity.
Right. Also wanted to discuss about what is it that you're seeing, Mr. Ahuja, about the growth projections. Would you say that the RBI was a little conservative in only, readjusting their growth projections for FY20 to 6.9%? I mean, let's be realistic. Company after company that we've been interviewing on the channel is talking about the slowdown. More importantly, they don't even have visibility on when we're going to come out of this soup. And only an adjustment of 0.1% doesn't seem all that realistic.
Yeah, it's a specious argument. My point here is the slowdown is there. Like you very rightly said, that, when it will turn is not entirely within the realm of predictability at the moment. Although I believe that with this kind of overall policy emphasis and some of the things that, even the government in Delhi is trying to do, my view is that this is probably a 2-quarter problem.
Okay.
And towards the end of this fiscal year, we should start seeing, some, as they say, green shoots. So that's the way I'm looking at it.
Okay.
We've had, several years now of so-called the cleansing process that's been going on. And I do believe that now we are, pretty much reaching the end of it.
Okay. So would you say they will require more than that? The government will have to push in some amount of stimulus into the economy. There are sectors like real estate, auto, for instance, wherein the pain points were first visible, and it doesn't seem like they're out of the woods anytime soon. Would it have to be a dent on the fisc, but some amount of stimulus that it would take from the government's end to push this forward? It can't be only an RBI thing.
It is not supposed to be only an RBI thing.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that is amply clear, and even all the expert commentators on the subject will agree on this matter. But I think the government is also now more and more seized. In the last few weeks, perhaps that realization is even stronger. And I think sectoral issues will have to be addressed.
Right. Vishwavir, you were talking about how, growth is going to pick up in the second half. But where do you see the recovery being led from? Because if you look at where things are currently, private consumption is very weak. We are seeing pain in a lot of sectors, right from FMCG to auto.
Certainly the pain is across the board. And I frankly, if I was not clear, I'd said that the problem will remain for at least 2 more quarters. And I feel that it should start sort of turning around towards the end of the financial year. That's what I'd said. And I think that presupposes that some of the things that we're talking about in addressing some of the sectoral issues and giving that kind of fillip through other means, as was just talked about, is also going to be an essential and integral part of the solution. So that is good. And I'm supposing that, people are seized of that, and that shall follow. From a Reserve Bank of India perspective, they've done what they could do.
Okay, Vishwavir. So from the Reserve Bank of India perspective, we've been very charitable and very generous. They've done whatever they could do. But are banks doing whatever they can do? Are smaller banks like yours willing to cut deposit interest rates, follow SBI's lead? Have you cut? How much would you cut? And will that impact your deposit mobilization?
So, yes, the answer is yes. Actually, in the last 2 months, we've cut our lending rates by 25 basis points. We've also cut our deposit rates by the equivalent amount. And as of, based on today's policy, we are certainly going to cut approximately as much, going forward in the next few days. Our ALCO has to meet in the next week or so. And I think that decision we will definitely take. So yes, to that extent, the answer is that reasonable transmission has been happening with most banks. And I think it shall, happen a bit more as we go forward. But again, I want to add, this 25, 50, 75 basis points is not going to move the needle very much in terms of the larger issues that you're raising, out here. So that's why I keep saying that Reserve Bank has done its bit. And we really need to see a different kind of policy action, which has to address some of the fundamental challenges that we have.
So would you say the ball is now in the government's court? And what would you tell the government if you were to tell them?
Look, I think that's the question that I have never wanted to answer, because we are too insignificant and small a player. We have to really work hard in building our own destiny and do it in the right manner. And I think we are fully engaged with that. We take what comes and we do the best we can with it.
Vishwavir, one of the big advantages of being in a democracy is that we are all free to speak our mind, regardless of whether we are small or big. There's nothing that is preventing us. So that was why I asked you, what would you like the government to do? You said the RBI has done whatever it could do. Banks are doing whatever they can do. So that leaves only the government. So what can the government possibly do?
Yeah, without going into a lot of sort of details on that, and I did say that some of the affected sectors those issues have to be dealt with, number one. Again, the whole question of, large-scale privatization, which is one thing that has worked in the past, and I think that's where a lot of unlocked asset values are sitting, is one very important and critical, if I may say, thing that needs to be not only kick-started, but needs to be done on a war footing, if I may say. Because, we talk about the fisc and the pressures on the fisc. I think there is no short-term measure to release that pressure. And it can only happen through some of these methods. While you need the impetus on the fillip on the one side, for certain sectors, you also need to raise resources pretty quickly on the other side. And that can only come by unlocking some of the unproductive assets that are, available in the realm of what the government sort of controls and manages. So, keeping it brief, but, broadly, that should be the direction. And of course, the entire policy framework in the country has to also help in improving the sentiments. I think some of the recent announcements have caused a bit of a dampener on sentiments. And I think some of those issues need to be reviewed.
Oh, absolutely. So there, see, you've given your advice to the government, and it was very good advice also. But coming back to the NBFC sector,
you asked me a question and I've tried to answer that question.
The governor's very categorical statement in his press. Oh, and you've done it very well, Vishwavir. So let me just revert to one last question on the NBFC. That, the governor in his press conference was very categorical that it will be the RBI's endeavor, he used the word endeavor, to ensure that no large, systemically important NBFC will collapse. Now, should that really be a very heartening message as far as both NBFCs as well as banks are concerned? Will it remove a lot of the doubt, the uncertainty, the cloud, the suspicion as far as NBFCs are concerned?
So words have to be followed by action, but certainly from the governor's point of view, it was a very important message to convey, and he has done that, and I think we appreciate that very much.
Over from me. Okay, so Vishwavir, it's been great talking to you. I think we've spoken to each other after close to 25, 30 years when I was in Reserve Bank of India, and I think you were last in Grinlays, or was it ABN AMRO? Great talking to you. With that, it's over from me. Aisha, back to the studio.
And since
Bank of America, great.
Since we have Mr. Ahuja right here in the studios, I'd like to take the opportunity to really ask you. You seem confident about the economy recovering in the next 2 quarters, but you on the sidelines of your earnings this quarter said that your gross NPAs may actually rise up to 2 to 2.5% over the course of the year. There's a bit of a discrepancy here.
No, it's not. It's not. It's just that, like I said, that the corporate environment in the country has been vitiated.
Okay.
We know that. I mean, we know that very well, that that there is not only lack of, corporate capex, there is no growth there, and the entire sort of sentiment is very sluggish. And also we've been, because of the cleansing process that's been going on over the last 2-3 years or so, I think all these things are sort of coming out, more and more. And it's a combination of some of that, the cleansing. It's a combination also of the fact that a lot of the promoter leverage challenges are now much more out in the open.
Yeah.
The avenues to address that are much more limited in an environment where liquidity was very tight and the capital markets were very volatile. None of that has helped.
So is there an upside risk to your NPAs? Because like you're rightly saying, the promoter leverage and the promoter default issues are just about beginning to come up.
Yes.
Could your NPAs rise higher than 2.25%, which you earlier guided? Or see possibility of?
My answer is no.
Okay.
Yeah, that, I mean, one should never say never, but the fact of the matter is that that was a comment we made a few days ago,
yes,
after a very detailed and thorough assessment of our forward-looking outlook.
Projections.
Yeah. So projections are projections, but at the same time, since then, we have retested and stress-tested our portfolio again. And we believe that today, even in fact, 1 or 2 aspects of news have happened after that announcement. But despite that, we are sort of confident of being able to maintain our asset quality and credit costs to the levels that we had indicated.
What are the sticky accounts from you, and where do you sense most problematic accounts or problems really arising from?
So first of all, as a matter of policy, we don't talk about specific accounts.
Sure, sectors. Just give me a broad
From
parameter.
a sector's perspective, the very sectors that were just named,
Yeah.
But the problem with us has got nothing to do with any of the sectors.
Yeah.
We don't have a sector problem. Whether it was the power sector previously, or the infra, or if I may say the auto sector or the NBFC sector or any of the other so-called troubled or sensitive sectors. The bank has essentially stayed away and clean from all of these troubled, if I may say, accounts and sectors. So ours is not a sectoral problem. Ours is a problem limited to 2 or 3 sort of corporate accounts. Which are affected by the
usual suspects.
The symptoms that I just talked about. And that has its flow through second, third order effect, which therefore affects the loan sitting on bank books. But having said that, we are hopeful of resolving as much as we can. And at the end of the day, the proof of the pudding is in eating. And what we want to demonstrate is that we will come in within our, so-called caution or, cautious projections that we have given.
Okay.
So, but we did want to put it out there that there is a issue in the corporate sector. There is a slowdown. There are certain challenges and stresses out there, which pretty much everybody has talked about.
Yeah. Therefore, the possibility.
Therefore, the possibility, and some of that will play out. There's no question that nothing will happen. Something.
Yeah, you got to take everything with a pinch of salt. But great speaking with you. I hope we speak once your next quarterly numbers come out, and hopefully we will see yellow weeds emerging, or perhaps even green shoots.